I'm Miranda.
And I'm April.
And this is A True Crime Co.
A podcast about everything macabre and mysterious.
Today we're going to be talking about the Greyhound bus murder in Canada.
Canada!
So, on July 30th, 2008, a Greyhound bus full of passengers was traveling along the Trans-Canada Highway heading toward Winnipeg. It said Trans-Canada. I thought it should be Trans-Canadian, but I don't know. What do you think is right?
Well, what's the spelling? Is it Canada or is it Canadian?
It's Canada.
Well, it is Trans-Canada.
Anyways, so on July 30th, 2008, a Greyhound bus full of passengers was traveling along the Trans-Canada Highway heading towards Winnipeg. Timothy McLean, 22 years old and also known as Tim, was traveling home to Winnipeg after working at a carnival in Edmonton. His pregnant girlfriend was waiting for him. Tim had fallen asleep near the back of the bus with his headphones in.
Which is normal.
I mean, I could never.
I think that's where the engine is, so it's like really loud back there.
I don't think he was all the way in the back.
It says he's in the back.
It said he was towards the back. Listen. Don't make me use the cat meme in this episode.
You're gonna. I mean, it's gonna happen. Continue.
At 6 p.m., a passenger named Vincent Li, known as Vince Li, boarded the bus in Erickson, Manitoba. Vince is a Chinese immigrant who migrated to Canada in 2001 and gained citizenship in 2006. At the time of the incident, Vince was working as a church custodian, though it should be noted he had a bachelor's degree in computer science. I think that maybe the language barrier. I think I did read somewhere that the language barrier was frustrating for him.
I am terrified of language barriers.
Sorry.
Terrified of them.
Yeah, I've actually worked with quite a few Spanish-speaking participants, and I feel so bad because I'm like, I wish I knew how to speak Spanish for you, but I just don't.
Yeah, I mean, I have a hard time understanding English-speaking people. I have to concentrate sometimes. I'm like, I close my eyes just so I can concentrate on their voices and what they're saying, and I'm like, can you just repeat that? I'm not sure I understood it.
Reports by other passengers stated that Vince seemed agitated and confused when he got on the bus, but ultimately he settled into a seat at the front of the bus. According to what I read, he was just going through it at the time. Yeah. Like, he had a lot. He had it going on. He has some stuff going on.
Like what? Just the language barrier?
No. He had actually recently converted to Christianity and was hearing the voice of God.
How often?
So the voice of God was telling Vince that he was the third story of the Bible. I don't know anything about that. So what's the third story?
Continue. I'm going to look it up.
Okay. So God was telling him that he's the third story of the Bible and the second coming of Jesus.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, this one. Why did you pick this one? This one's going to get. This one is like tenuous.
To be fair, I didn't know about the whole Jesus stuff when I picked this one. So, anyways, Vince was also supposed to be sent to this life to save the world from an alien invasion. So just keep that in mind. Shortly before 8:30 p.m. on July 30th, about 19 miles outside of Portage-la-Prairie, Vince moved seats and sat down next to Tim.
The guy's minding his own business, listening to his own music, and trying to rest after he spent weeks at the carnival.
I don't know if it was weeks, but yes. Who's also traveling home to Winnipeg to his pregnant girlfriend. Vince then produced a large knife and began stabbing Tim in the neck and chest.
Why?
We'll get to that. So I heard in a podcast I listened to a long time ago that it was a machete. I don't know. None of the other sources I read said that it was a machete, so
That's a heck of a long knife to hide somewhere. Oh my god, this smacks of like the Candyman one where he has those 3-foot pixie sticks and he's hiding it in his shoe.
Yeah. Could have not been a machete.
Maybe it was like one of those, what do they call them, Bowie knives? Rambo-y. The big ones.
I don't think they're called Rambo-y knives, but
They're not. They just said Bowie, and I just think of Rambo every time I hear that. Anyway, continue.
At this point, Vince starts to stab Tim with the large knife. Well, we don't know what it is. And the bus driver pulls over to evacuate the bus. And then the bus driver and 2 other passengers try to intervene, but Vince chases them away and is like slashing at them. Vince then decapitates Tim and held his head up to the window so that the evacuated passengers could see. And then he went back to Tim's body and eviscerated the corpse.
Please define eviscerated.
So he started like cutting off other parts of the body and like cutting the body open and taking the innards out of the body. And then there's also reports that he started to consume Tim's body.
Did God tell him to do this?
As a matter of fact, God did. So
not only was he here to save us from the aliens, he's supposed to eat said aliens?
Yeah, because they're actually interconnected. The murder of Tim and the alien invasion are one and the same for Vince. So at 8:30 p.m., the Royal Canadian Mounted Police in La Prairie received calls regarding the assault. When they arrived to the scene, the evacuated passengers most of them are huddled up on the side of the road, terrified, vomiting and crying and just not having a great day, right? The bus driver, one of the passengers, and then a truck driver who had actually stopped to provide aid were keeping Vince inside the bus. Like they had blocked off the front doors with a crowbar. They were keeping him contained in the vehicle.
Well, I mean, I would too, wouldn't you? You wouldn't want that crazy loon out trying to hack everybody else up, right?
I really don't know what I would do. I really don't know what I would do.
I feel like I know what you would do.
What do you feel like I would do?
You'd be like, peace out. Bye.
I don't know, because I like to think I'm a helper, but also I like to not get decapitated and eaten. So,
I mean, I would prefer not to be eaten and decapitated and disemboweled and eviscerated.
I don't think I would be trying to keep him in the bus. I think maybe I would be trying to run some kind of interference with the evacuated survivors.
How did I know I was feeling like this was going to be like a football metaphor? I'm going to run interference.
Well, I didn't mean
tackle him.
I was trying to say triage. I was trying to come up with the idea of triage in my head, but
triage for what? For
mental
Tim?
health. I don't know. For the people who were evacuated from the bus, they're probably going into shock.
I'm pretty sure that they are in shock, staring at this man eviscerating poor Tim.
They need a little support too. Just saying. That's what I like to think I would do.
So I feel like maybe you would do that.
I would make it to where they're looking at me with their backs to the bus. It doesn't matter because I'm not on a Greyhound bus in Canada. So
I mean, there's better things to. I mean, that's not a scene that I would expect to find in Canada. I would expect to see something like behind you or something, but
it's a beautiful landscape, and
it is beautiful. I mean, Canada's a beautiful place, as far as I'm aware. Very cold in certain places, like Nova Scotia, but
we're not in Nova Scotia.
No, but I'm sure we could find something in Nova Scotia.
Actually, Canada has a lot of serial killers. We probably would.
You know what? I bet you $100 that America has more.
I'm not taking that bet.
Why not?
All I know is that there are parts of Canada you just don't want to hang out in because it's a serial killer country. Okay.
I can't believe you don't want to bet me.
No, I don't want to bet you. I like money.
I do too. That's why I want to bet $100.
So anyways, the bus driver, a truck driver, and another passenger are keeping Vince in the car when the police get there. By 9 p.m., the evacuated people from the bus are being transported to the nearest station to be interviewed and give their statements, and the police are in a standoff with Vince. The standoff...
Them with guns and him with a Bowie knife? Slash...
I don't
what you
know.
call it?
Is the mounted police armed?
Yes.
I've never been to Canada, and I've never been in trouble with the mounted police.
I mean, they're just the police, but they're just called the mounted
Well,
police.
in Switzerland, the police don't have weapons.
Yeah, but Switzerland is like the Switzerland. they're the what do you call it? The party that is, I can't think of what it's called. They are the safe place. They're neutral. That's the word. Neutral. They're the neutral place.
Anyways,
So Switzerland, I don't think you can't compare Switzerland.
I mean, I just did.
Maybe Japan Japan doesn't use armed unless absolutely necessary, right?
Their police are armed, but they don't have gun laws in Japan are weird. They are. I don't know much about them, but the police are armed with handguns. I don't know.
Well, one of the Asian countries is not armed. They have batons or something. What are these called? Amps?
I don't know.
I don't know. Okay, so I'm just looking at it. I don't know if this is right, but I just typed in third story in the Bible,
Mm-hmm.
and it's talking about. I'm gonna butcher this. Eutychus raised from the dead in Tros is just a snippet of this, but it says on the first day of the week we came together to break bread. Paul spoke to the people, and because he intended to leave the next day, kept on talking until midnight. There were many lamps in the upstairs room where we were meeting. Seated in the window was a young man named Eutychus, who was sinking into a deep sleep as Paul talked on and on. Sounds like Paul was a talker. When he was sound asleep, he fell to the ground from the third story and was picked up dead. Paul went down, threw himself on the young man, and put his arms around him. "Don't be alarmed," he said. "He's alive." Then he went back upstairs again and broke bread and ate. After talking until daylight, he left. Man, he talked a lot. The people took the young man home alive and were greatly comforted.
I don't understand.
Basically, Paul raised the guy from the dead. Ish.
So is he Paul or is he the dead guy?
Paul is a separate person.
Is Vince Paul or the dead guy in the story?
I'm thinking Paul.
And Jesus.
No, not and Jesus. It's just Paul.
Well,
Paul's a disciple.
That makes sense because when I get to the trial, we'll get to that. Just hold on to that.
Oh my God. Okay, we'll get to that. Moving along. Please go ahead.
So at 9 p.m., the police are in a standoff with Vince. The standoff lasts for hours, a very long time. And police report that throughout these hours, he is pacing the length of the bus. And then he's like alternating between pacing the length of the bus and defiling Tim's corpse. More specifically, eating Tim's corpse. Finally, at 1:30 a.m. on July 31st, so the next day, Vince attempted to escape. So he broke out one of the windows and fled through the window. And he was obviously apprehended by the Royal Mounted Police.
And that's like a 5-foot drop.
He's a little unhinged.
A little?
Yeah. So, when they apprehended him, they did collect some of Tim's body into evidence bags.
That sounds terrible.
Yeah. Well, it's worse because they also found Tim's ear, nose, and tongue in Vince's pocket. And
I guess it was to have a snack for later.
still worse, Tim's heart and eyes were never recovered.
Because he ate them.
Well, Vince is very adamant that he didn't eat them.
He
But
ate them.
since police and witnesses watched him eat parts of Tim's corpse, they're pretty sure that he did eat the eyeballs and the heart. Which is bad.
Why is it always the eyeballs and the heart? I mean, eyeballs I get because they're just little round things. Even though, like, have you ever seen an eyeball that was just ripped out of somebody's eye, like
I mean, not in real life, but yes.
in a movie? Well, and you have that long. Got the white ball part, and then you got the sinew that comes off of it. It's just like pop that in like a tic tac. Go on with my day.
I really hate that analogy you just used.
Yeah. Okay. He ate it like a meatball. I mean, what would be better? It's both gross and disturbing.
This whole incident is stemmed in like religion, right? This is crazy religion delusion happening in his head. So maybe you eat the eyeballs and the heart because the eyeballs are the windows to the soul and the heart is the life force. And he actually says it's mentioned during the trial that he ate parts of Tim's body so that Tim's body couldn't be resurrected. So the heart makes sense to me if you're trying to prevent somebody from being resurrected, especially if you have the ability to bring people back to life.
But I know, that's the weird thing though, is I think there's been a fascination of the heart being consumed for a very long time in rituals and
warriors used to eat the heart of their kill to gain the strength.
Right. And then you got the Game of Thrones where she had to eat a horse heart.
I think that's kind of the same.
Yeah, I'm attaching.
I know.
But that was the TV shows or a book.
Attached stuff. It happened in the TV show too.
I know that, but I'm kind of just drawing the lines, attaching it all together.
I don't want to be sued by HBO.
Well, it was much worse in the book. I can say that.
Anyways,
Just saying, I read the book.
The heart is attached to strength, life, all these great things. So it makes sense to eat the heart. And the eyes are the windows to the soul.
Well, you would think that it'd make more sense to eat the brain.
How are you going to break the skull open and eat the brain on a Greyhound bus when all you have is possibly a Bowie knife or a machete?
Well, you know what? That's more than they had at Herb's Topless Bar.
And they didn't take his brain out.
But they decapitated him, didn't
Do you know how hard?
She had to dig in his brain for the bullet.
Do you know how hard a skull is?
I know how hard-headed you are. Does that count?
It's a lot easier to sever the spinal cord to decapitate somebody than to cut the skull open and take out the brain. Maybe the eyes were the windows to the brain, and that's why he ate them.
In ancient Egypt, when they were mummifying people, they would basically stick a hook up the nose canal into the brain, swirl around and pull the brain out.
I'm aware.
Just, not a lot of people know. I mean, I think people know that.
Anybody who watched the 1999 rendition of The Mummy knows that.
Not everybody likes those kind of movies.
Well, back on track. So, not funny. Tim's ear, nose, and tongue were found in Vince's pocket. His heart and eyes were never recovered.
They're in his stomach, that's why.
That's what police believe.
I mean, where else? You going to stuff them under the seat? You think they didn't find that when they looked under the bus? Literally, come on. What are they going to do? Throw it out the window at people and say, here, catch?
He's
No,
not
they
really
didn't do that.
giving a reason. He's just like, I didn't eat it. I know where they are. But
You know, I don't know why he thinks he needs to lie.
I mean, when he's clearly not in his right frame of mind when he does this, right? Clearly. He thinks God is telling him to do this to prevent the alien invasion. Okay?
Why is it always God telling them to prevent things by killing other people?
He's apprehended on July 31st, 2008. Several months later, on December 1st, 2008, Timothy McLean's son is born.
Oh, yeah, it's because his girlfriend's pregnant. I remember now.
Yeah, that made me really sad.
That is sad, actually.
And then that's like, when you're older and you want to know who your dad is, you type him in and this is what you find.
Oh.
And it gets worse.
How much worse?
So in March of 2009, Vincent Li is found not criminally responsible due to mental disorder. Vince's psychiatrist stated that due to schizophrenia, Vince believed he was acting out of self-defense and in the behest of God. Vince truly believed that Tim was an evil entity and that he had mutilated the remains to prevent the evil from resurrecting. Both the defense and prosecution were in agreement with the observation and were in favor of involuntarily committing him to a mental hospital instead of prison.
Forever? Like until death does he depart this world?
Okay. So this is the aftermath. This is the straight off Wikipedia.
What? You just going to ignore my question here?
No,
or are you getting to that?
We're getting to that. I just didn't want to say it again. We are going to get to that. I want to go through the events after the conviction in 2009. So he was committed to the Slekirk, that's not right, Slekirk Mental Health Center.
Like, just type it into Google and say pronounce.
So this attack actually led to lots of petitions for increased security on buses. I'm not sure. I've never ridden a bus, so I don't know if there's like security guards on buses now. I don't think so.
Maybe there's cameras, but nobody's gonna. Okay, look. There's not enough funds for people to have armed escorts on buses.
I know the bus is way up.
Yeah, and I mean, there's not even enough funds to have like proper staff police in general.
At the risk of sounding like a conservative here,
that's what you're worried about. Okay.
That had an armed guard been on this bus, Tim might have survived this attack.
Unless he picked the guard to attack.
Then Tim still would have survived.
Yeah, Tim would, but then this would be about a different person.
It's true. You're right. And I don't think we all consider the fact that just because you have a gun doesn't mean you can actually pull that trigger. But that's for a different day.
That's for a different podcast altogether with random crap.
Podcast.
That podcast is going to be the opinions of Miranda.
They're strong. These opinions are strong.
Mm-hmm. We're going to put Miranda first because she has a lot more opinions than I do.
So, the aftermath of this case. The family of Tim McLean brought a $150,000 lawsuit against Greyhound, the Attorney General of Canada, and Vince Li.
That's all.
I'm going to have to just keep reading these bullet points because it doesn't even say how that turned out right there either. On June 3rd, 2010, Lee was granted, so he's sent to the mental institution March of 2009. Just over a year later, on June 3rd, 2010, Lee is granted supervised outdoor walks within the mental health facility as voted by the Provincial Review Board.
I'm not sure that's how that's said.
Shh, it's okay. All right. On February 16th, 2011, two passengers, Deborah Tucker and Kyla Shaw, filed a lawsuit against Li, Greyhound, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, and I don't know because it cut off, but something else, Canada something, for being exposed to the beheading, and they were each seeking $3 million in damages. On July 14th, 2015, so 4 years later, the two women dropped their claims, dropped their suit.
Yeah, because how are they going to win that? There is no possible way to win that.
Yes, there is. If I had to go
Wow.
to therapy because I watched a man get beheaded, I think you should pay for my therapy.
Yeah, that's not $3 million.
I think I'm entitled to $3 million if I had to watch a man decapitate someone else and eat his insides.
Yeah, because that's entitlement. But they chose to take the bus. It's not like they have a warning on a bus that says, hey, when you take the bus, you may be murdered by some psychotic who thinks God is talking to him.
On May 30th, 2011, CBC reported that Li was responding well to his psychiatric treatment and that his doctor had recommended he get freedoms phased in over several months. On May 17th of 2012, the National Post reported that Li had been granted temporary passes that would allow him out of the mental hospital for visits to the nearby town, supervised by a nurse and a peace officer. In an interview with someone named Chris Somerville, I'm not sure who Chris Somerville works for or when this interview occurred, but in the interview, Li affirmed his guilt, saying he can never forget the Greyhound bus incident. He acknowledged that McLean's family likely won't ever forgive him. Probably not. When asked for parting words, he provided an apology to McLean's mother, stating, I would like to say that to Tim McLean's mother, I am sorry for killing your son. I am sorry for the pain I caused. What about his baby mama? What about his child that will never know his father? Anyways. On February 27, 2014, CBC reported that on March 6th, Li would be allowed to have unsupervised visits to Selkirk, starting at 30 minutes and then progressing to full-day trips. Since 2013, he had been allowed to have supervised visits to Lockport, Winnipeg, and nearby beaches. On July 17, 2014, the Toronto Sun reported that one of the first officers on the scene, Corporal Ken Baker of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, had committed suicide. And family stated in his obituary that he suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder. On February 27, 2015, CBC News reported that Li was given unsupervised day passes to visit Winnipeg. On May 8, 2015, CTV News reported that Li would be granted passes to group homes in the community. And in February of 2016, it was reported that Li had legally changed his name to Will Lee Baker and was seeking to leave his group home to live independently. He won the right to live alone on February 26th upon the recommendation of the Criminal Code Review Board. On February 10th, 2017, the Manitoba Criminal Code Review Board ordered Li be discharged. Li was granted an absolute discharge. He's out as of 2017.
So is he cured from his schizophrenia? I didn't think it was curable.
No, he's on a treatment plan probably that he responded well to.
But if he's independent, it's not monitored, so he may not continue that.
That's true. Yeah.
I just don't understand why he's out.
Neither does Tim's family, and they've actually started, I read somewhere, I don't have it written down or printed out, so sorry, but I read somewhere that Tim's family, his mother, is actually trying to get the code, like the laws changed to where even the criminally insane and criminally negligent people still have to remain in treatment forever. Like, just because they're not in prison doesn't mean they should be released.
No, he murdered somebody brutally.
Yeah, and you're right.
He traumatized a bus full of people.
He was completely discharged, which means that he doesn't have to keep up his medical regimen. And he could move anywhere else with his brand new name. And
America, here he comes.
better not.
This is the land of serial killers.
That's what the world says, but there's tons of serial killers everywhere else too.
Oh my God. No, he should not have been released whatsoever. He should have been basically life in prison in the psychiatric place or sentenced to death row, something like that. He should not be out.
He shouldn't be on death row. He was not mentally capable of being sentenced to death row. Also, I don't know if Canada does that. But, and I'm even okay with supervised outings, okay? If you're taking your medicine and you're getting healthy, supervised outings, sure. But to just be absolutely 100% free, no stipulations, no guidelines, no nothing, I'm not okay with that. Because a lot of people with mental health disorders get on medication, they get a handle on their diagnoses and their situation, and then they think, wow, I'm cured, I don't need this medication anymore. Then they stop taking the medication. And if you're Lee, you stab someone on a bus and eat his insides. So probably not good.
I feel like if he did it once, he's going to do it again.
Hopefully not, because he's a free man. He was released, and they say he does not pose a threat, a significant threat to society. That is the first thing that comes up when you
How is it? How? Explain it to me.
He's on a treatment plan.
That he can stop at any time.
Yeah.
He seriously, he like brutalized a bus full of people, including bystanders. Bystanders. Is that right? Bystanders? Yep. Bystanders.
Yeah.
That's dumb. Anyways, no, he should not be out. They need to go get his ass and take him back.
Well, that was several years ago, so I don't think they're gonna. He's just free. They say he served his time and he doesn't pose a threat to society anymore.
But he does.
Well, we feel that way. His family feels that way. But the criminal board doesn't.
Well, they need to get a new criminal board. For sure.
That's all I have.
Well, that's thoroughly depressing.
I don't have an update as to where he is now, what he's doing with his life now. When I typed in his new name, all that comes up is the bus stuff, so probably he can't go anywhere. Because it is thoroughly connected.
Let's trap him into Canada.
Maybe he did get his passport and stuff revoked.
You know, can you revoke citizenship once you get it?
Yes, if you're an immigrant.
So are they just let him? I would think that they would send him back to where he came from.
They can't revoke his citizenship because by the criminal board, he is listed as not a threat to society.
But he is. That's the thing.
Yeah, but because he's listed as not being a threat to society, they cannot take his citizenship away.
That just seems not right to me. But who am I? I am just a lowly, uneducated person. And I know nothing about Canada Like 0. I know that their food is expensive if you go. I know that.
If you ask Chris, it's because they have universal health care.
Well, I don't ask Chris these questions. I don't.
We can talk about things like that in this house. Because one of us is aggressively opinionated about human rights. And the other is Chris.
We just don't have strong opinions here in this place.
I do.
No, I know you do. And your sister does, and your mother does, and I think your brother does too, and your father does.
First off, my brother's opinions differ greatly from ours. Secondly, my parents and my sister are a little bit more radical than me.
That's all we got.
Join us next week when we talk about the disappearance of Maura Murray. It's going to be equally as depressing. So, it's not equally as depressing as someone being decapitated and eaten.
Yeah, pulverized.
But it does not have a high note because it kind of sucks. But join us next week when we discuss Maura Murray. If you like us, stick around, like, follow, subscribe, all the good stuff. Comment. But until next time.
I feel like we should say, please like us. Please like us. Until then, bye.
Bye.